Yeah, making the new IP is, how can I put it? It's just don't do it. It's insane. I mean, it's a very difficult process. You have more questions than you have answers, especially when you come from like, you've been making Uncharted 1 and Uncharted 2, just kind of like, now like things are going, you just kind of like good momentum, and then suddenly that momentum like just drops, it stops. It's a very challenging process to create a new IP, and you're gonna fail over and over again, but that's what it takes.
New IPs are really hard. They're hard because you don't know what's fun yet. You're building new tech, new AI, establishing new characters, new art, all this. You don't get that controller in your hand for like 6 months to a year.
You don't know what it is yet. I remember like ages ago coming on the project and what are the infected gonna do? Like, what are they gonna do? They're gonna behave like this. I'm like, okay, we're like trying to imagine what's gonna happen. Fast forward like 4 months, they don't do that at all because it didn't work, right?
It's hard mode, right? Like it's game development on expert.
There's a big thing about making a game, right? Which is a game has to be fun. You get your first build where everything's working. You got player mechanics. You can walk around the world. You can shoot. You can melee attack people. You've got the AI in there. They're very intelligent, very difficult, and it's totally not fun because they snuck up behind you and murdered you in a second, and there was no way to figure out what was going on. We're making a game, by the way. Hey, James.
It's grown quite a bit since I started. I think I was the 12th employee or something back when we got started, but we've tried to stay true to those smaller studio roots.
I've been here for 16 years. There's just no reason to leave. I just like the environment here. It's very non-corporate.
I think the way we work on Naughty Dog is kind of special because we don't really like hierarchy or bureaucracy, and no one is really just a manager here.
Naughty Dog has a very flat structure. We pretty much all report to the co-presidents and the game directors.
I always tell people when we hire them, just like, my job is going to be able to trust you, and that's what I want. I want just to give you something and you go with it, and I know it's going to get done.
We believe in iteration, we believe in collaboration, and we believe in the people making the game working directly with each other.
When we have designers and artists, animators all mixed up, anybody that's working on the same tasks, the same characters, the same areas, put them next to each other so they can communicate a lot better.
We don't have a lot of meetings because if you need something to get done, you just walk over and you talk, and then you go back to your desk and you finish it up.
And I really like that. I like when I just walk in the office and I see just designers talking with the programmers or programmers over the animators and talking to them. I think that's when really the magic happens.
Naughty Dog, we really try to cultivate a culture where anybody can criticize anybody else's work.
And we encourage people to be blunt about it and not try to sugarcoat it too much. It takes too long to be nice sometimes.
It's not personal. It's based on more like how can we make a better game.
We want everybody to have a voice. We want to cut out all the bullshit if we can, making sure that people are making decisions not based on ego, but what is going to benefit the game.
When you see that people trust your opinion and that they value it, it's such a great feeling. You really feel like you're working as a team on a collaborative effort.
We want to sort of remember where we came from and you know why we were successful then, and try to continue that success now.
We make games. That's what we like to do.
Back when Uncharted 2 wrapped up and we decided that we were going to build the second team and create a new project, we kicked around a lot of ideas. One of the very earliest ideas was to go back to Jak and Daxter. It's really near and dear to us. We really love those characters in that universe, and we think that there are some interesting stories still to be told there. We started to realize that it was not going to do justice to the franchise that the fans had fallen in love with. It would be shifting it so far in a new direction that we felt that effort would be more justified in developing a new IP. Neil and Bruce came to Christoph and I and said they wanted to do a post-apocalyptic game. I think the core essence of what they wanted to do, though, was to try to tell a story about two people and how their relationship evolved over the course of the entire game.
That potential, oh wow, there is something very special about that game. This is going to be polished. Like, you're not sure if it's gonna work or not, and you have doubts. And like, should we be doing a game like that? Should we be doing a first-person shooter? Whatever. Like, you ask yourselves all those questions.
And the creative director and the game director are the core of the team that have to really see eye to eye.
That's why you have that balance between like Bruce and Neil, and Neil's gonna try to push the just the story and the characters, and Bruce is going to try to push that with just the gameplay as well. And so it's kind of like those guys are just trying always to find the right balance between the two. It's a very delicate process.
We feel that the interactive medium has an untapped potential to touch the feelings of the player. You have that connectivity, the fact that I'm actually in the world and participating in what's happening on the screen in front of me gives us some sort of advantage to make you feel connected with what's actually happening. At Naughty Dog, that's what we're trying to do, is pair story and gameplay together. If we can make you feel like you're actually with these characters on that journey, and you're invested in those stories and those characters, then you're feeling, in theory, the same thing that they're feeling.
As the story evolved and took different shapes and different forms, the thing that was always there was Joel and Ellie. And because of that, everything kind of grew out of that relationship.
We've seen kind of that role of the anti-hero change, especially over the last 3 to 5 years, to where before it was like the thick-neck mercenary kind of guy. For this game specifically, for this story, we needed something new.
The reason we didn't want to make Ellie Joel's daughter from the get-go is because it wouldn't have anywhere to go. Of course, at that point, he'd be willing to do anything for his daughter because that is what a dad would do for his daughter. They didn't even know each other at the beginning of the story. Then we start from scratch, and it's almost like the player has the same relationship to Ellie as Joel does. And we could take our time to build that relationship between these characters, and if we do it right, then the player will be feeling that same growth that Joel does, and we're kind of mirroring that emotional relationship between the two.
What are you doing?
Killing time.
Well, what am I supposed to do?
I am sure you will figure that out.
Your watch is broken.
It's exciting that Neil wrote something like this, where he's like, I don't want to make the stereotypical characters. I want to make real people in this crazy situation and these forced to make decisions that are really tough. Like, what would we be like in those situations?
I mean, we weren't consciously trying to pick male or female for characters. You just try to pick characters and just be honest with who they are. It almost doesn't matter, right? Joel's daughter could have been Joel's son. Ellie could have been a boy, and Joel might have been Tess. You could have swapped those roles, and I think the story would have still worked.
The focus on female strength, it's so unique. You get to see what's so powerful about a woman through all of these female characters, which makes this game wonderful and unique. There's a crew of Fireflies that'll meet you at the Capitol building.
That's not exactly close.
You're capable. You hand her off, come back, the weapons are yours. Double what Robert sold me.
Speaking of which, where are they?
Back in our camp.
We're not smuggling shit until I see them.
I want Joel to watch over her.
Whoa, I don't think that's the
I'm not
best
Ellie.
idea.
Him?
How do you know them?
I do think having a strong female character especially like Ellie, is so rare in video games. And as a gamer, and more specifically a female gamer, it's frustrating to me because I'll see sort of the stereotypical female character where she's amazingly beautiful and huge boobs, and she's there to be either the love interest or just because they're like, well, we need to throw a chick in here.
We've seen the strong woman or we've seen the weak woman. We haven't necessarily seen the empowered woman from this kind of standpoint. And there's that beautiful scene where Joel finds her inside the house and she's reading through this girl's journal going, is this really what they used to worry about? What shirt do I wear and what boy am I gonna go out with? You know, and to be met with those first world problems that we deal with every day and go, how trivial is all of this? I think it's gonna resonate a lot, not just with, you know, a female audience, but with a male audience as well.
The thing that was intriguing to me after the fact is knowing that we're kind of creating a female action hero in a way, and this is her origin story with Ellie.
To sort of be such a strong female character that is completely normal looking, regular t-shirt and jeans, and she's 14 and she is still a total badass, is really exciting to be a part of that.
There's so few non-sexualized women in video games, especially in the main role, that we were kind of proud that we were creating one. It's very complex, and without the players knowing it, she becomes the protagonist by the end of the story. And that's why she's in the front of the box, and that's why we've been promoting the two of them together so much.
Who's there? It is a dual protagonist game, and yeah, I guess I get nervous to think about it in that way.
We couldn't talk about it. In fact, in interviews we've been lying about it, saying you never play as Ellie because it was so important for that to be a surprise. Sorry, journalists.
Here we go. Sorry. Hold on. That's it.
The tone of the game was set pretty early on that we knew that we wanted to make a really grounded story. We knew that we wanted to make the player feel the sense of tension and dread and go through the same emotional roller coaster that Joel and Ellie were going through.
One of the things we kind of struggled with is to say, well, if we want to really ground this world and make it so like realistic, maybe we shouldn't have anything that could be perceived as a monster. Maybe like by just having an infection that just killed people, and it's all about humans and how they deal with this post-apocalyptic society and how different people decide to survive. Maybe that would be enough. And what we realize is because we're making an action game, a lot of the storytelling happens on the joystick. And once we remove the infected, it's like all of a sudden now we can't tell the story through gameplay of what happened to the world. And that's where we kind of went back and kind of brought the infected back in, because it lets you see, once you're fighting them, the threat that people had to deal with that otherwise would just be very cerebral and people could talk about it, but you couldn't necessarily experience it yourself. In a novel, that might work. In a game for us, specifically an action game, it didn't work.
And from there, when we start kicking around those ideas, and we're just like, what would be cool just to play?
The early inception for it really came from a BBC video we saw called Planet Earth, where they were talking about a cordyceps fungus.
This cordyceps fungus gets inside of the brain and controls these ants, and mandibles start chomping, they grow up to higher areas, cordyceps fungus sprouts out, and then it germinates.
And essentially uses them to spread its infection and take over whole colonies, sometimes wiping them out. As soon as we saw it, we were intrigued by the idea of, what if it jumped to humans? So what would happen? How would people react? What would happen to society? As we're trying to develop the look of the infected, we went through so many different iterations, some that looked really alien and subhuman, some that looked just essentially like zombies, and we couldn't find like an original place for them. But one of our artists just did this kind of photo mashup where he took a bunch of images of diseases or images of fungal overgrowth, and he kind of mashed it all together and he threw it on this person.
It was a very iterative process, making sure that the fungus felt properly integrated, like it was part of the body, growing out of the body.
And not just fungus growing on the head, but it's tearing the face apart, cleft down the middle, this gaping maw of a mouth with the crooked teeth.
And it's in great agony as its humanity and its brain is still somewhat functioning. Maybe you still have some human cognitive abilities or thought process back here.
This isn't some decaying corpse on the ground. This is a living thing that's going to be coming after you in the world.
The fungus is always the focal point. So you can see from a distance, oh, this guy's infected. I can tell straight away.
And fungus have these beautiful saturated colors. And we really like that conscious of this something so horrific that it's going to like stop at nothing. It's relentless force of death. And yet elements of it are beautiful. It's not just about gore. It's not just about everything about it being scary, because to us it's actually scarier when things on it are somewhat benign or somewhat beautiful.
It was evident that we were onto something that was quite a bit different and something that we hadn't really seen before, which was eerily human but very disturbing.
And it seemed so creepy and so unique that right away we gravitated towards it, and it's like, this is our base infected. Everything should kind of come out of this look. So once we had this idea of the face-splitting kind of look that eventually became what we called the clicker stage.
We went to great lengths to create a full biological cycle for these things.
So in the early stages, you don't actually see too many signs of the fungus surfacing out of the skin. It's kind of underneath it, like people have lumps starting to show. The eyes will be kind of cloudy or lopsided because the fungus kind of originates inside the head.
That moves into the next phase, which is the clicking phase.
And if they mess with the eyes, we end up saying, well, how do they get around? Oh, echolocation.
And they use a form of echolocation to track down their enemies.
Just like bats or even some blind people can see by making a clicking sound, a sound that on its own wouldn't be very scary. And then to associate it with something that people in this world are very fearful of, so that as you're exploring an environment, all of a sudden you hear this click, and you're seeing everybody just get frightened, just everybody duck, everybody hushes.
Great.
The bloater is the most severe of the stages. So large pieces of the body has been replaced by these kind of fungal plates.
The fungus completely takes over the body and blooms.
They're kind of covered in things that have been growing on them. Things like moss and like little life on life kind of.
What the fuck is that?
Oh, goddamn bloat! When an infected feels like it's going to die, it finds like a dark corner and it becomes part of the environment.
The human elements aren't there anymore.
And then the body is gone.
They lay down and sprout and then spew spores.
And if people can breathe those spores, they become infected as well. It all had to kind of make sense of how each stage flowed from one to the other. And that's hopefully how we've created a world that you can kind of look through it and understand the science behind it and say, I can buy this, I can get into this.
Mandatory evacuation. Evacuate to where?
What do you think? Quarantine zone. See, some places got a heads up before the infection showed up. Most didn't.
Over the course of Joel and Ellie's journey through this game across America,
you find all these different societies, all these different enclaves, and you get to see how do they deal with the infected.
Without the manifestation of this infection, you can't have these people making those interesting choices.
The world we decided was actually its own character, really grounded with a lot of texture. What happens, after 20 years of the fall of man, when no one's taking care of anything.
This book called The World Without Us describes in detail how much fighting on a day-to-day basis we have to do to keep nature back. And once you stop doing that, how quickly nature can reclaim that. As they talk about New York and how every day they pump water out of the subway system. That system breaks down within 2 days, a whole city is flooded. And once water gets introduced, then structures collapse pretty quickly. Trees will sprout and wind will carry those seeds over and gutters get clogged. And then when it rains, water fills up and then pretty soon you have vegetation growing over there. And once you have vegetation, concrete breaks pretty easily for when there's a tree and roots breaking through that. Even some of the stuff we did on Uncharted, you know, exploration of how temples were ruined. What if you took those ideas and put them in Pittsburgh or Boston?
And obviously right when that happened, you can imagine that being pretty terrible to look at. But you think about 20 years later, and with rainwater filling up those sinkholes and then those becoming like little marshes with lily pads in them.
We had this wonderful piece of concept art we developed really early on, and there are all of these wild animals that have escaped from a zoo and over the past 20 years have bred, and now they have herds roaming these cities. And that's something that tells you that life goes on and this world is worth saving.
Don't scare it.
I won't.
There's something really pretty about nature reclaiming its domain once we are gone.
So fucking cool.
We have another level of OCD of the logic goes into some of these environments. Water damage seeps in, and then that creates some little moss growing on the floor, or a tree radiates energy from its base, and that over time starts to melt the snow around it. And that's the reason why you'd see those like rings of leaves showing through in the snow. That gives it that extra, you know, believability. This is pitch art. I'll try to start with an idea that conveys sort of the feel of the environment. Something like this, very brushstrokey, very painterly. You can see not a lot of detail, just energy and conveying a mood. This is sort of just a conversation starter, and then this would be more of an actual space. So you start talking about, is this too tight of a space right here? Would the player even fit through there? Do we even want to include water? Those are conversations you start having a little bit later. And then it usually needs several more passes back and forth in order to be tightened up to be the experience that you would see in the final product. So, dude, I was actually trying to figure out right here, there should probably be some dead foliage.
It might be cool to see some of the dead stuff around the edges of the green, or like even spilling out into the street.
Maybe what we do is, in some of these areas, we use it as like a transition from the actual concrete to the side of the building. So like they're almost sitting on top of a bed of dead foliage, like that really rich kind of like orangey brown color.
Sienna or something would be nice. Something real cheddary.
That's how you know you're done. The end product often ends up being stronger because that bouncing back off somebody else gives you a result that maybe you wouldn't have even thought of in the first place.
All right, here's the bridge. That's our way out of here.
As far as concept art goes, definitely the ultimate goal is just helping everybody as much as possible.
Me and the background artist will work together. I'll often just go to them because they've got like a really, really good like visual imagination. At some point, you came in almost like flat on. So that's kind of good because the bus station is right in your peripheral view, and you're probably going to enter the bus station. You're probably not going to get lost. But it doesn't at all utilize this cool architecture here, like the bus station sign. Like that's a really distinctive silhouette, and it's a really interesting sort of architectural detail. So we changed the entrance.
Look at that. Another city, another abandoned quarantine zone.
I think it's a better composition anyway. It's not so like symmetrical. And I think that was done so that this sign read better. If you didn't see the word bus on it, you might not know it's a bus station. So I think that helps.
Everything we're doing in the environments is relating back to what you should be feeling in the story or what's happening to these characters.
So is that everything you hoped for?
Jury's still out. But man, can't deny that view.
Come on, this way.
When we first came up with Ellie and Joel, we had this idea in our heads of who they would be, but we didn't necessarily know the voice.
It took us a while to find our Joel, but for Ellie, I think Ashley was the second or third candidate to walk in, and right away we knew.
Yeah, you know
Why
what?
are you so scared all of a sudden?
Because I'm a coward, okay? So just get your shit. Let's get out of here.
Damn it. I'm not like her, you know.
What?
You think I'm gonna end up like your daughter?
The way she delivered the lines, the way she just embodied that character is like, that's Ellie, there's no question about it.
And I saw the character artwork and I related to her a lot. I mean, she's kind of a tomboy and she's kind of tough, and I mean, obviously I'm not 14, and I think that's the main difference between the two of us. I read the scenes and I was like, I need to play this part.
You want to be my hero?
Forget the whole bit about saving my life. Buy me a stack of these bad boys instead.
Where'd you get that?
Back at Bill's. I mean, all this stuff was just lying around.
And then once we had her, we said, okay, well, we're going to do another round. So we're going to have Ashley this time in the casting sessions. The chemistry of these two characters was imperative to get right.
Troy was a really interesting casting for Joel because when you see Troy, he doesn't look like Joel at all.
You know, he's so handsome and he had like, you know, the frosty hair and totally looked like Final Fantasy. And so
I'm like, yeah, I don't know. He's like this tall, pretty. It didn't seem right.
I walked into the room fully aware that I was the youngest person that they were seeing for this role. There was a line that was in the audition side that says that Joel has few moral lines left to cross. And so that became the anchor point to the character.
But then as soon as he spoke and he had the grit in his voice,
warm yet kind of dangerous.
And his movement is just like you bought into it.
Why are you so scared all of a sudden?
Because I'm a big coward, okay? Now pack up your shit and let's go.
God damn it. I'm not hurting now.
What?
You think I'm gonna end up like your daughter?
Lily, you are treading on some very thin ice right now.
It was Ellie and Joel.
after he read, it was just like that was it.
I've done some video games in the past, but to be handed the mantle of a franchise like this was a pretty big honor.
Is she alive?
She's alive. She's David's newest pet. Ah!
Where?
In the town. She's in the town.
You mark it on the map. It better be the same exact spot your buddy points to.
Neil pulled me aside one day, and he said, I have some ideas. And as you're well aware, Neil is a little twisted. He came up with this character, and I just jumped at it. It was such a departure from everything I've done here for Naughty Dog, to say the least.
Name's David. This here's my friend James. We're from a larger group. Women, children. We're all very, very hungry.
To be able to put on a voice that, hopefully a lot of people won't know, won't notice that it's even me. Because we didn't want it to be Drake. Drake eating people, that's a whole nother game.
How did you put it? Tiny pieces. See you tomorrow, Ellie.
Certain voices that I can do wouldn't fit the David's artwork, but he showed me the art, and I
said maybe it's something like this, where everything's, it's very quiet. And just, he's not really sure, and the voice can break a little.
And he just looked and goes, yeah, that's it. So I'd love to tell you we hashed it over and we talked. No, it just, I looked at the picture and I tried something. He said, yeah.
A few weeks back, I sent a group of men out a nearby town to look for food. Only a few came back. And turns out that the others had been slaughtered by a crazy man. And get this, he was with a little girl. You see, everything happens for a reason.
Claire.
Ashley, she brought humor to it.
She just has some really great comedic timing. The way she reacts to the things around the world with a little bit of sarcasm, that teen kind of like trying to get a rise out of you.
Now watch your step as you're going out, because it's going to be a little...
It just brought a certain levity to the story that the story needed. You didn't even realize it needed it until she started doing some of that stuff.
Oh, I'm sure your friend will be missing this tonight.
Mm-hmm.
It's light on the reading, but it's got some interesting photos.
Now, Ellie, that ain't for kids.
Whoa! How the hell would he even walk around with that thing?
Get rid of that.
Hold your horses. I want to see what all the fuss is about. Oh, why are these all stuck together? I'm just fucking with you. Bye-bye, dude. Throughout the course of shooting over these past couple of years, Ellie and I have kind of morphed into each other, which I know sounds so cheesy. Neil always asks, he's like, well, what would you do in this situation?
I think the most important thing that Ashley brought is a sense of capability to Ellie's character that wasn't there in the beginning.
The very first thing we shot involved her being pulled out of a car and attacked, and Joel is supposed to go save her.
It was written that Ellie sort of was just kind of watching on the side, just waiting till he was done, and I was a little frustrated because I was like, well, if this were real life, I would do something.
We did a couple takes, and at some point she walked up to me and she said, I feel like I'd hit him.
So we added in a part, like, right there off the bat, she's not just this damsel in distress. Right there, she wanted to fight back from her very first day of shooting.
We didn't have it right initially. She needs to be more capable than initially we thought she would be, and actually that made us go back and rethink combat and rethink a lot of the areas in the game, and now she was going to take a much more active part.
Anything that requires, a lot of body movement, we do with the actors on the mocap stage. And we try as much as possible to use our actual principal actors, use their body motion as well as their voice. We capture it all at once there on the stage.
Having the actors perform as well as being recorded at the same time was imperative to get an accurate performance. Because every time you split up the performance in any way, you lose some of that magic where they did a gesture or they delivered the line a certain way. And those things have to be in sync, or there's just something subconscious that's like off-putting about the performance when you don't do it that way.
You are treading on some mighty thin ice here.
I'm sorry about your daughter, Joel, but I have lost people too.
You have no idea what loss is.
Everyone I have cared for has either died or left me. Everyone fucking except for you. So don't tell me that I would be safer with someone else, because the truth is I would just be more scared.
It gives you the most authentic, most realistic performance, because you're actually there, not just making your own choices, but making your own choices based on the other people that are involved in that scene. So you get this truly natural approach to things, and it shows up.
It's like theater in the round. You can do anything from any angle, and the smallest, most subtle thing we'll be able to pick up.
There's no place to hide. So you have to be as prepared as possible, because you have no idea which moments they're going to use.
There are these little improv moments and, little nuances that you get that probably isn't scripted, that just comes out of play, while they're performing. That mistake that is just blossomed into a really good idea.
Did we improv on The Last of Us? Yes. Yes, we did.
Doing this was a whole lot like being 5 playing in the backyard with a stick, and this is my machine gun, and and a pine cone is my hand grenade. It's all your imagination. I'm doing the exact same shit that I did 45 years ago. I just get paid for it now. We square.
We're square.
And get the fuck out of my town.
I don't do a lot of voiceover work, so for me, it was nice to be able to work off of your other actors. I can't imagine it working any other way.
I'd never done mocap before. I didn't know what to expect. The suits were crazy.
Yeah, the suit gave me wedgies. Like, deep wedgies that I had to pick out with my middle finger. Too much information.
Just how damn sexy I look in a motion capture suit. I look like 10-pound of sausage in a 5-pound casing in that thing, man.
Once you get past the fact that like everybody else and you look like weird clown people with these little dots and stuff, once you like give over to that, it really was pretty easy to make it just feel like you're in the moment and in the scene.
Everyone that was on this is a slam dunk. This isn't just another gig to them. And that creates a really cool energy for people to really start experimenting and playing jazz.
Floor is yours.
And action.
Get the fuck off of me!
Oh, let her go. Don't worry, this is fixable. But I can't come with you.
Well, then I'm staying.
Ellie, I want Joel to watch over.
Oh, no.
Bullshit, I
Ellie.
won't do
Going
it.
to.
I could just take her to the North Tunnel and wait for me there.
Jesus Christ.
Just cargo, Joel.
How do you know them?
You know, we craft the scene out until it has a good feel, and then we pass it off to animation to clean it up.
Real life motions don't necessarily always translate into gameplay.
There's something that's usually missing, so we have to, you know, maybe enhance the gesture or enhance the shoulder movements or a breath that you want to be able to feel, but you don't really see it, so you can't really feel it unless you see it.
Is everything all right?
Yeah, everything's fine.
I could have him lean in here a little bit more, like this, take his hand down. When they're on stage, they don't necessarily have windows, you know, so that weight of like really pushing and leaning in, it's something that we would have to accentuate. You know, give him a little bit more weight on that turn or put his head down a little bit more.
There's a lot of dialogue that gets said between the two characters. We have to bring that alive through animation, and we have what we're using as gestures.
Why would they mow down all these people?
Can't let everyone in.
If you turned off the sound, you'd know that they were talking to each other. And that really helps accentuate the relationship that the two have together. We have certain animations that play in the beginning of the game on Ellie. She's traveling with Joel, who she doesn't really know. There's a lot of gestures to make her look nervous, just her overall stance. Later on in the game, they develop a relationship through the animation, not just the dialogue. You can see that she's more comfortable around him. If that reads well with the player, then, you know, we're doing our job. We want her to look scared. When she gets a gun, we want her to look scared of the gun.
So if she's gonna aim, she wouldn't be like super trained aim. She would be more like some scared. But at the same time, it needs to look cool and feel cool to the player that plays.
It's really just these little tiny details that we're doing, and it's coming across. It's working out well.
We don't do facial capture, we don't track eye movements on stage, it's just the motion capture data. Everything that you see on the faces is hand keyed. As you can see, this is all of her mocap data. And so when I'm doing something like this, I go back and forth to the performance that she was giving, and I watch just this section over and over and over again. So this is our default face. I can make everything super extreme and make her all squinty and angry, turn her frown down. I can open her mouth, stick her tongue out. It's listen, watch. Okay, where's her mouth at this point? Like, is it open? Is she making like a grimace?
About Tess, I don't even know.
Here's how this thing's gonna play out. You don't bring up Tess. Ever. Matter of fact, we just keep our histories to ourselves.
We shoot all of it to just get the body motion, and then we'll do a second pass with the cameras.
The scene's playing back on an overhead projector, but it's also playing back on a monitor that's attached to my rig.
Sean and I would go to the stage and motion capture the camera filming the scene, and so he would get a whole wide shot, a whole close-up for the whole scene.
You know, you can change your lenses, you can use your standard 35, 85, 50s, whatever, all that sort of live action camera cinematography, you can apply it on stage.
We make sure to go back in and add flaws.
We keep the confinements of the room so the camera can't go past a certain wall, because then we have this cheated perspective. If the cameraman bumps into the wall, we keep it. You know, missing focus hits when you're pulling focus, going too close to a character and reframing, those little moments in there kind of keeps it very cinema verite.
If everything was too perfect, you wouldn't be able to put your finger on it, but you'd be able to feel it. It would just feel off.
It's very much about grounding it, despite having, you know, the option to do whatever we want.
Being able to place the cameras anywhere we want after the motion capture gives us both advantages and disadvantages. The biggest advantage is it means that we just have to nail the best performances we can get, and the luxury is that we can always swap it.
The 3D world gives you limitless opportunities with cameras and movements, exposures, all that stuff. Most of these cameras are sort of set up like real world cameras. So we have lens, we have f-stop that will create the depth of field. We have aperture to, you know, set our film back and all that stuff. A master, and then I have my close-ups, my over the shoulders, sort of just like a live action production. Let's go to camera 30 at the 23.458. Then I get that kind of weird, you know, bend across his back. The closer I bring the camera, the more bend I get, which is, you know, doesn't look right. It doesn't look it looks less cinematic than if I do that, which flattens the whole thing. And I'm trying to also catch Ellie. Like if you scrub a little more, catch her in the back here. So I want a longer lens of that kind of stuff.
Since I've only had experience working with live action before I got into video games, it was a kind of a cool adjustment to be able to have this extra flexibility in post, to swap a line of dialogue for something different, even though that's not what the actors said at that time, and to be able to still have a close-up on them while they said it. You get to make it probably more perfect than you could ever make it in live action.
How far are we gonna take
as far as it needs to go. Where was this lab of theirs?
Because our actors are both the voice and their body, they get to play, they get to try things, they get to work with our director to kind of come up with new ideas, or even our director will have a new idea on the spot that wasn't there in the script, but realizing when he sees it, oh, well, this would actually be better, this might feel better. And those changes all just happen organically there on the set.
He could even lead straight into his thing. He's like, no shit, yep, Tyler wanted to do that, so we rented 2 Harleys and drove cross country.
Keep it pretty succinct, like we got the bikes, rode them cross country. Cool.
It's shocking to me that this is Neil's first time directing.
There was a specific tone and a specific approach that Neil and Bruce wanted to take with this. It just came down to, there's nobody knows this story better than you, and then there's nobody that knows these characters better than you. Why don't you just do this?
He and I actually had a conversation about it. He says, I think I'm gonna try this myself, and I'm not sure. Neil was fantastic.
The floor is yours.
Okay, so remember, you've been running away from this turret-mounted truck. If you come to this dead end, you're going to look up and see a potential way out. And action.
Check it out.
I mean, his writing is honest, and it's dangerous, and it's natural.
And I love his economy of words. He doesn't hit everything on the nose, so it leaves it open for you to interpret and bring some nuances and things like that.
The entire process is collaborative, but really it's led by Neil's willingness to change and flow and decide something doesn't work, fix it right there in the moment. And it is something that's very foreign to the way that TV and film is done now, where everything has been micromanaged by the time you get it to the table read, and no one wants you to change anything, and everything's very precious and has been rewritten with notes from 20 people in suits, and you can't do that just anywhere in entertainment these days.
Yeah, I want to make sure. I think I swung too far over to this way, and now it's a little bit of making jokes about it, and I need to bring it back to center a little bit.
There's one scene in the game where we see Joel not as a ruthless survivor, but as a father. I knew from the very beginning that he was going to lose his daughter, and I just told Neil, I was like, when that day comes for us to shoot that, I need a heads up. About a week before, he said, it's time, we're going to do that scene. I was like, okay, because I knew that I was going to have to go to this place that you don't really want to go to as an actor. You want to find some aspect of reality that you can empathetically draw from,
Troy and I were both kind of just like walking around for a while and just kind of getting into the zone, and well, my grandpa died when I was 8. He was like my dad, and so that's always what I use to get into that place.
I started recalling all those memories and starting pulling up all those feelings, and they're just right underneath the surface. And when I walked back in, everyone realized that something was different. They kind of calmed down,
You could feel the energy just drop a little bit more.
It was brutal.
I lose my shit. I mean, just completely break down.
Don't do this, please, God, no. Oh, God, no!
The soundstage was deathly still.
It was the first take, and I felt really good about it. And it's like Neil said, okay, let's do it again. And so you do it again, and automatically you feel like you're manufacturing because you're trying to go back to that place, and you're in that actor nightmare of trying to get back to that reality. And we go through it again in 5th and 6th and 7th take, and I'm just exhausted. I'm crying between takes, and I'm looking at Neil going, this is really, really hard. And finally, after the 8th or 9th take, he said, all right, I think we got it. I was like, oh, thank God. And I went outside, and I was just jacked up for the rest of the day. Just a wreck emotionally. But we got it. Then 2 weeks later, he calls me. And he says, so we need to reshoot a scene. I'm like, cool, what scene are we doing? And he just looks at me. I said, dude, don't do this to me.
And you can either at that moment throw your hands up in the air and say, fuck this, and walk away, or you can say, okay, this is an opportunity to get it more right.
I'm like, okay, all right, yeah, you don't think you got it? I'm gonna show you that you got it. We've got it in the can. And so we go through it again, and it just feels fake, feels artificial. And Neil goes, go through it again. We start doing it again, and I'm getting madder and madder with each take. And finally, about the fourth take, Neil comes over to me, and I love him so much. He goes, so I'm picking up on some resistance. I was like, you're damn right you're picking up on some resistance. We've got this in the can already, and we're just wasting our time, and we're wasting all this effort and energy. And then he started talking me through the scene. And he was like, what I need you to do is I need you to just strip yourself of all these ideas, and I need you to hit this beat, and this beat, and this beat, and this beat, which just makes it sound so mechanical, and it's such an emotional scene. So we start going through it, and literally I am mindlessly doing these things at this point.
Okay? I know it hurts, baby. I know. So I'm gonna lift you up. I'm gonna lift you up. I'm gonna get you over here. Come on, baby. Come on, work with me, please. God, baby. Sarah. Sarah! Don't do this to me, baby. Don't do this to me, baby. Come on. Come on.
And he stops, he goes, now we got it. And I realized that the reason why I wanted that first take to work was because I wanted everyone to look at me and go, wow, what an actor. And that's not what the scene needed.
Those moments where you just have to sort of calm your ego down and just go back and do your work.
That scene actually works, not because of me, but in spite of me. And that really is the marker and definition of working with a truly good director. There are many like it, but this one is yours. Why don't you have a seat?
Thanks, guys.
It's the director's chair.
Working on the project, we knew we wanted to have a pretty minimalist soundtrack. And we had a folder where we just throw music in there. Looked at the folder one day and we saw, we have a lot of stuff here from Gustavo Santaolalla. We're looking for a composer. What if we reached out to him?
Oh, no. Sarah. Move your hands, baby. I know, baby, I know. Listen to me, I know this one. You're gonna be okay, baby. Stay with me. I'm gonna pick you up. I know, baby. I know it hurts. Come on, baby. Please. I know, baby. I know. Sarah. Baby.
My life has been and still is kind of like a road movie. I grew up in Argentina. I came to the United States in 1978 because we had a horrible political situation in Argentina. We had a military dictatorship where 30,000 people disappeared at the hands of the government and many other more were tortured, and I was blacklisted. It was just impossible for me to keep on living there. I've been in jailed many times since I was probably 15 years old just because I had long hair and I play an electric guitar. So I had to embark on this trip. I can relate to that kind of need of movement and going to the next place and the next place and the next step. I'm always attracted to the possibility of getting involved with a project from the very beginning. I like to work from the script and talking to the director.
It's never been, oh, give me a piece like this or give me a music that's this. It's just been very high level. Here's what the story's about. Here are the themes. Go write some stuff.
Since I don't know how to really read or write music, the way I produce music is actually recording it. So I like to come early in the projects, and I did in The Last of Us. one thing that was fantastic from the very, very beginning was the freedom I had to try and to do whatever I felt could work, you know?
As the story was still being written, you could listen to this piece of music and just get a sense of where this needs to go tonally, because the music was still inspiring the story. So that was the great thing of having the music written so far in advance.
And at the beginning, I mean, I was going really out with some things, and sometimes some of those things were the ones that they liked the most, you know? So I really felt very motivated to work, and I enjoyed immensely working.
It was this very organic back and forth experience where one element was inspiring the other and vice versa.
I needed to go into some more dark places, more textural and not necessarily melodic. I'm always trying to sort of push myself into playing instruments that I don't know how to play. There's an element of danger and innocence. Lennon once said, you know, give me a tuba and I will be able to do I'm an artist. I should be able to do something. I like to put myself in that situation. So these are just PVC pipes, the one used, you know, in construction. Or instruments that I know, kind of twist them. From the concept of the prepared piano, you know, I mean, I've worked with prepared guitar to stick things into the guitar and things like that. And also in The Last of Us in particular, I work with a detuned guitar. So I really tune the guitar extremely low. And the result is, you know, strings that are very loose and will produce not only sound, but produce noise. Because I believe, you know, every environment has its own sound. We have in our, you know, small studio, we have actually the possibility to record almost anywhere, including the bathroom, and we have done some fabulous recording, especially in the kitchen. When you score to picture, which is something that I don't do, then you know what you're gonna expect. But when you provide people with music, like I've done in all the films that I've done, and then you see it, how the director decided to use that, you know, in what particular way he uses or where they edit it. It's always fascinating to me. I watch a scene and I'm going, you know, it's fantastic how they use this piece. I would have never, of all the music that I've done, probably I would have never used this piece there, but it works, you know, great. So I like that feeling of collaboration. I think, you know, the guys also that work in programming and adapting that music to the game, they should share a lot of the credit for the end result.
In the beginning, there was silence. Yes. Then they hired sound designers. Then they regretted that decision.
Hold it steady. Ha! Got you!
In a much quieter environment like that, we really had to fill out the soundscape with much more natural sounds, much more detailed, delicate sounds. The tension comes from the lack of sound, in a way.
Your brain is thrown off because we're expected to hear buses and crowds. All of a sudden I hear wind and leaves rustling. Again, it's creepy and beautiful at the same time because it's almost like I'm going on a hike, but I'm in a downtown area.
Get up over this truck. Let's see what we can find.
So Neil, I mean, we were going through the iterations, so he just did not want, like, yells and screeches and what he called kind of witchy qualities,
Right.
the cackling witch. He didn't want anything like that. It was a little bit of a head scratcher to figure out, okay, how do we make it sound human but not human?
Yeah.
We really did not want to use any animals. We wanted these all to be human. Derek and I basically decided to hire a couple of voice actors who did some interesting work vocally to see if they could come up with something. And we worked with this girl, Misty Lee.
She started giving us these really great screeches.
And that's no process.
Yeah, that's just her voice. And it started going into this little click. We also used a little bit of Phil's voice. We'd combine that also with an occasional Derek. That's just me, moving my tongue. And what that kind of did was it sort of grounded it all, like maybe in the mouth area, the wetness, all that kind of stuff. And it adds a nice texture, actually. This is a composite of all the bits I just told you about.
Sounds like a Snapple bottle.
Oh, the lid?
Like the lid, yeah.
That's a good idea. Fuck, where were you guys like months ago? Why did we think of that? Why did we think of that? Viewers at home, you're probably wondering what this is. Let me tell you. About 10 years ago, I saw this Synthi A suitcase synth. I wanted to get one. This finally arrived in January, just in time to start using. I thought, well, what can I do with this? In Lakeside, there's a whiteout that happens, and this thing has a noise generator, which gives really convincing wind sound.